Welcome to Great Shot. This is the Great Shot Podcast, a Cracked Racquets and Tennis Channel Podcast Network production. My name is Alex Gruskin. On today's show, we've got another edition of The Deciding Point, our weekly breakdown of all of the action happening across the Division I college tennis world. We're doing things a little bit differently this week. Now, some of you may be aware of this as you've listened to our other Cracked Racquets podcast, but we're expecting a new family member to our Cracked Racquets team as the Westhoff family adds another kid into the mix over the next few days. As such, super producer Daniel Westhoff going to be out of commission, and he does not ask very much of us here at Cracked Racquets, but he did ask that we pre-record these shows so he can go home, spend some time with his sister as she has her second child. And of course, we are sending our love to the Westhoff family on that fact. But as such, we're pre-recording today's episode. Now, normally these are recorded live on YouTube Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be doing that every week after this, but we're recording this here on Monday night. So if anything crazy happens over the next 24 hours, we do apologize for that fact. We also are unable to interact with all of you in the chat today, but of course, we will get back to answering all of your questions live on next week's show. Of course, that said, still have plenty of exciting action to talk about from the Division I women's college tennis world over the past week. We want to recap all of that today, talk about the Texas Pepperdine road trips, talk about the Blue Gray Classic, what's going on the West Coast, all the other results as well. And if you're going to break down anything happening in the Division I women's college tennis world, there's only one guest you can turn to have on your show, and he joins me once again today. Of course, you know him best as our co-favorite writer for our website, crackrackets.com, founder of the No Ad, No Problem blog, a recognizable figure now in the college tennis community. It is our friend, West Coast correspondent, John J. Parsons. Jay, hey, great shot. Welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Gruskin. You know, I know you're good at the tease. I didn't know that applied to family members as well. I mean, this Westhoff baby has been, the through line of so many of these broadcasts. I'm like on pins and needles waiting. But congrats to the Westhoff family. Very excited for them. And yeah, recognized this weekend. Shout out to Eric, who came up and introduced himself. It was great to interact with folks and chat about all things college tennis, all things feedback on the pod. So it was really an exciting weekend.
Wait till you get your first naysayer who comes up to you and is upset with some sort of point you made. Or, again, I think those are the more fun ones. Diffusing those situations to me are always enjoyable. I will also say this as the son of an OB-GYN. Yes, baby talk has always been, I suppose, a pertinent part of my life. So maybe that's why I've emphasized it so much. But yeah, there better be an Alexander in that name somewhere at this point with all the promoing and all the hyping I've done. I mean, it's a free plug for this new Westhoff baby. But of course, speaking of plugs, have to give a shout out to our friends at SwingVision, the power behind these Deciding Point episodes. And look, for the latest and greatest in tennis technology, turn to our friends at SwingVision. They make breaking down and improving your great game that much simpler for all of us. And the older you get, the less time you have for things like private lessons or group play, right? Whenever you can get on court, it's got to be a valuable experience. All you got to do is download the SwingVision app, set it up on the back fence while you play. You'll have a free film session when you're done breaking down all of your makes, all your misses, the things you need to improve, all in one location. It's artificial intelligence for your tennis. You can learn more about the SwingVision app by clicking on the link in the description to this podcast. You're going to want to download it once you do. And when you do, don't forget to use our promo code. You'll let them know we sent you there. Use that promo code CRACK20. You'll get $20 discount, a 14-day pro trial. I'm telling you, folks, if you want to get better at tennis, you're no longer in the juniors. SwingVision is what to turn to. Learn more by clicking on that link in the description. Use that promo code CRACK20 when you inevitably do sign up. With all that said, we got a lot of college tennis to get into here on today's show. So let's do that. And let's start with the flashy results. Couple of 1-1 road trips for two of our top three contenders entering this 2022 college tennis season. And let's start with the match you were in person for. And of course, I joked and called you our West Coast correspondent. You got to catch some Stanford, Texas action in person. Texas dropping the match to the Cardinal earning their biggest win of the season by far. And for this young group of Connie Ma, Yepafanova, and, again, others as well, turning the page on that Michaela Gordon era. What a win for the Cardinal after missing out on the national indoors, losing to Virginia. And you look for Stanford, what was perhaps most impressive about the victory, they drop the doubles point, but ultimately take 5 victories in singles. They win all 4 of the matches that go 3 sets. Connie Ma gets a win over Peyton Stearns. Yepafanova gets a win over Kylie Collins as well. Let's talk about it from the Stanford side first before we get, dive deep into Texas's weekend. This is the moment for the Cardinal, right? This is the breakout victory you need to get your season rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I mean, this was a much needed win for Stanford, right? I mean, you had the past 2 NCAA champions facing off, Stanford 2019, Texas 2021, plug for UNC 2020.
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah, good. I can all do it for you. So this is a huge match, right? And it was interesting because this is a very untested Stanford team, right? Only played 5 matches. Yes, they lost on the road to Virginia, but that was really their only test of the season. So I was curious to see how not only this team would respond, but ultimately they're reliant on a host of freshmen as well, right? And so facing off of it against Texas, which while still young, has quite the impressive pedigree, and also just even their freshmen have been more tested this season in the dual season, making indoors. So I thought it was super impressive for them to respond and take 5 singles after dropping the doubles point. They looked really bad in doubles. They really need to find answers.
Which is interesting because they beat Virginia in doubles.
They did. Yeah. That's a good point. They beat Virginia in doubles, who Virginia has at times looked excellent in doubles this season. So, the transitive property just doesn't work in college
freshman
tennis
gonna freshman.
Now. Yeah, exactly. And then that's what it was, right? I mean, some vulnerabilities at number 2 doubles, but ultimately, I mean, Stanford just looked really impressive up and down the lineup.
I have some follow-up questions for you on that lineup, if I may.
Yeah.
Let's start at the top.
Yeah.
Connie Ma beats Fiona Crawley at the Fall Nats and, I think makes the quarterfinals there. And she played Emma Navarro 2-3 sets at the National Indoor Weekend. She now gets a defining win. This is one for the resume. 3 sets over Peyton Stearns. Talk to me about the freshman's performance. If you haven't seen Stearns, you know what you're getting. The serve, the forehand, the pace, and the power she plays with. How is Ma able to break that down?
Yeah, we'll talk about the Stearns piece of this when we talk about Texas. I actually didn't think Connie Ma played particularly well. Granted, this was my first time seeing her in person, but I did watch the majority of that Navarro match on the stream. Look, Connie Ma has all the tools in the tool bag to take on someone like Peyton Stearns. And if she was able to get back that first forehand more often than not, and therefore kind of equal the footing in the match. She was able to throw off Stearns' rhythm, give her some drop shots, come to net at times, right? Just give Stearns different looks throughout the course of the match, and ultimately just absorb the pace of Stearns when the ball actually did go in the court in a way that I thought was really effective. Ultimately, though, this match, as many Stearns matches are, this match was not on Connie Ma's racket, but she did a phenomenal job of staying in the match long enough to eventually have that payoff.
Talk to me about the power tennis of Yepafanova. I imagine her versus Collins was explosive.
This was the best match of the day for sure. Highest quality, I would say, as well. If you haven't seen Yepafanova play, strong serve, plays differently than a lot of these players in the fact that she hits extremely flat, very low margin for error. I mean, not only over the net, but also, painting lines, right? And so this was high power tennis between the two of them. I was impressed with Yepafanova's fight in the second set. She was down, lost the first set 6-2, had chances to close out the second, but Collins' serve paid off. Ultimately, Yepafanova has some variety in her game. She loves to employ the drop shot in a way that I thought was not always effective, but probably effective in the meta sense in terms of keeping Collins thrown off. And that was just a battle. Those two players are super evenly matched.
Typical Stanford match attendee using the term meta here on the podcast. Couldn't be more fitting. Yeah. And then, again, I could ask you about all of the players. Freshman Valencia Shu gets a 3-set win. I'm sure she was impressive. But what I want to talk about, big picture, the quality at the bottom, because for Sarah Choi to get a 2-0 win over Rapalou, I don't care if Rapalou's not playing her best to start the season. 2-0 from Sarah Choi. How deep is this team?
Well, I have to talk about Sarah Choi because if anyone sees me in person, say hello, but you'll also see that like the structure of my matches, I'll hang at the top courts for like the first set and then I'll move over to the bottom, make sure I get a good lay of the land, and then we'll go where the action follows suit.
See, I'm going to have Westhoff quack all of that out live because you don't want people tracking your motion. Trust me.
Oh God. So the bottom bank of points, Sarah Choi was the best player out there. I mean, she is playing so well. I mean, you might not think of her as like a power player, and you probably certainly not in the Yepifanova Collins range, but she was just taking it to Rapalou off the ground, just so consistent, extremely solid. I mean, she didn't miss a ball and she was hitting with pace, and I was so impressed with her at the bottom of the lineup. It's an interesting question about depth, though, because I would argue that she's probably not their sixth best player, right? I think they have a vulnerability there at the number 4 position where they've essentially done like a line replacement with Anna Geller and India Houghton.
I was going to say, is Houghton? Well, yeah, that was the other thing. No Geller this weekend. I apologize. Go on.
Yeah, so no Geller this weekend. She struggled at kickoff weekend. They basically just replaced India with her at number 4. This is a player who only played 3 dual matches last year. From my own eyes, not their number 4 player. And so that's the question for me. I don't think they're going to be able to maintain Valencia Shu or Sarah Choi at 5 and 6. I think they're going to have to move up. And if Sarah Choi ends up playing 4, then you introduce more questions.
How happy would they be to just slide Michaela Gordon into that spot? Man, are they just a player short?
I know, right? And that's what we were saying, right? When we were looking at the preseason. I mean, she was there. She was there. Well, she could grab a racket.
So my broader question, last one on Stanford, then we'll switch gears here. Do they still have the depth, even without her? We've seen the Oklahomas of the world, the Pepperdines of the world. And, we were talking about this on a call last night. It's kind of the inverse of the men. On the men's side, no one's really playing their best right now. On the women's side, there are a lot of really good teams. Like, there is no clear-cut favorite. Is Stanford, after watching this match, and obviously you get a win over Texas, you feel pretty good about being the national indoor quarterfinalists who went 2-1 on the weekend. Are they in that mix, even sans Gordon?
No. And that was my takeaway on the weekend. Because the reality is that Sarah Choi would be a phenomenal 6 for them, but she can't stay there. And so the reality is watching the players who were at 5, I think of someone like a Pisareva at Oklahoma, like Valencia Shu is an interesting player. She's a total backboard, right? Shades of Emma Higuchi of the past for Stanford. I think it's going to be tough sledding for her against some of these more experienced teams. And so it's going to be hard for them to find 2 singles points consistently at the bottom of the lineup.
I'll sell my Stanford makes the final stock, but I'm still holding for them in the mix. I do think they're still on the short list of teams who, if things break right, can absolutely win the national championship. But let's talk about Texas now, who drops that match 5-2 to Stanford. They then play Cal in a rematch of a national indoor match we saw, and Texas got the win there. Texas gets the win here as well. And once again, Texas taking doubles. And, we see some team switches this time, over the weekend. This time we see it's Stearns and Collins at the number 1 spot. They earn a victory. Shavatapan and Zinalova at 3. They earn a victory. You look for Stearns the next day. She bounces back 4-3 over Giavara. You look for Zinalova, who also, she was good in both matches. Gets a win at 4 against Stanford, gets a win at 3 against Cal. You look for them. Where did they find that third point? It was Uvrutsky at 6 into that spot. Obviously, it means no Rapalou there. I mean, Texas had to scrap this weekend. It wasn't a consistent, all right, it's going to be Shavatapan, Lulu Sun, Kylie Collins, find one more. That it was seemingly in Rapalou, and just all last season, they cruised against everyone. It's not the case to start this year. And you look for Charlotte Shavatapan, no shame in losing a match to Kaya Wiersholm, no shame in losing a match in 3 sets to Angelica Blake. But that's now a couple more losses piling up for her early in the season. We see her now at the number 4 spot. Zainalova, Zemaripa, Uvrutsky, Rapalou. Still unclear who the 6 should be for Texas. And, again, I guess the simple way of asking, are you buy, sell, holding with this Texas team in 2022? It feels like, and this is crazy to say because they've got they're the defending NCAA champions who bring back 3 to 4 starters depending on the given day. But it feels like this team's a year away. Like it really does. Like this team next year, lights out if they keep everyone. This year, they're young.
Yeah, I don't know if I would frame it like that. I don't think it's the inexperience that is getting to this team. I mean, look, they went 1-1. I think there were pros and cons, right? The pros here were doubles, right? They had lost 3 of their last 4 doubles points, which was, how's this for a stat? As many doubles points as they had lost the entire 2021 season.
Yeah,
right. And so
right.
to get doubles with different lineups against both Stanford and Cal, that's a win for them. Zainalova getting 2 victories, that's a win for them. Stearns 1-1. Look, Stearns against Connie Mom, that's a match that Peyton Stearns needs to win, right? If she has pro aspirations, that was a disappointing result for me. It's a frustrating match to watch for sure. And then Collins and Shivathapan 0-4 on the weekend, right, in singles. And so, I'm a hold on this Texas team just because I just can't imagine a world where Collins and Shivathapan are still losing 0-2 in matches in May. But I think they'll have to turn it around.
So let me ask you, with Texas, more likely at this point, quarterfinals or finals of the NCAA tournament?
Quarterfinals.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And again, they're good everywhere. It's just, and I actually think Stearns has taken a step forward this season, perhaps more than anyone else. I think she is. I mean, she was really good last year, but you can tell everything's just on her terms now. And that's the sign of the elite in college tennis. I think Connie Ma is that good. Again, you were at the match, so you speak for it better than I do. But yeah, I mean, if you're Texas, you get the win over Cal. A puzzling Cal team that I don't even know what to make of at this point. They're playing around with their roster and, their singles lineup as well. You see El Sola up to 2. She rewards them with a win over Collins. Ivanov, though, dropping the match at 3. Wiersholm still lights out at 4. And, they usually split 5 and 6 between Rosenquist and Viller-Muller. This team's also really, really good. But, again, Texas Cal, like, is that a 2023 NCAA championship match preview? Maybe. 2022, I'm a little bit less sure. Any final thoughts on the Cal side of this equation?
I mean, a little disappointing just to play the same matchup again and kind of come up with basically the same result against Texas, right? It's always tough to beat a team twice, and Texas made it kind of look easy.
Fair. All right. Well, with that said, let's go to the other half of the road trip from a top 10 team. Pepperdine coming to the Midwest, get a 4-3 win over my Michigan Wolverines. And you look for Pepperdine, they do seem to have solved some things in doubles. Brodus and Chen, continue to be undefeated at that number 2 spot. They get a 6-2 win over Fligner and Miller. And then they clinch 7-6 over Boulay and Allen, that doubles point against Ohio State. I also thought if you're Taya Pachkaleva, much, much better this weekend than at the national indoors. And you saw her and Fukuda wins over Michigan, wins over Ohio State as well. They swept doubles points. But man, if you go listen to our college contender show on this Pepperdine team, our prophecy, prophesizing for this team was if they win a doubles point, you're just never going to beat them because, I mean, you have Janice Chen at 4 or 5, and you have Savannah Brodus, blue chip recruit, firmly at 6. You've got, one of Czar, Pachkaleva, Fukuda, Flores in the bottom half of the lineup as well. You feel like they should sweep that every time. You look for this team, again, singles this weekend. Overall on the weekend, they lose 5-2 to Ohio State, and, they lose 5 singles matches. So they're 1-5 in singles there, 3-3 against Michigan, 4-8 against Big Ten teams on the road in singles. I know it was indoor tennis, and let's wait till we get outdoors always with a team from Malibu. But 4-8 in singles, Jay. This team went 4-8 in singles over the course of the weekend. That is shocking.
Yeah, I mean, the irony of all ironies that you feel good about Pepperdine's doubles point and they can't find, 3 singles victories is just shocking. And it's not even like it's coming like, oh man, Ohio State and Michigan have like lights out 1 and 2s. And, so they're putting quick wins on the boards. Like it's not even that, right? It's happening at all lines, right? It's happening up and down.
Well, here's what I would say quickly. Shiori Fukuda is playing well. And her losing to Kantos 4-4,
Yep.
Arena just played really well. Shiori beats Kari Miller 2-1, I think, against Michigan on Friday. Like Shiori is playing as well as you can expect from a number 1. I think Czar's playing pretty well at 2 as well. It's everything else. Like you just don't know what Chen you're going to get on every day, on any given day. And Brodus, there are times when she looks really much, very much like a freshman. Pachkaleva does not have her legs under her right now. I don't know what's happening with Vicky Flores. I've given up trying to figure it out, but it's just puzzling.
It's totally puzzling. I do think, you're definitely right about Fukuda. She's had good wins this entire spring. Czar has looked good. I do think she'll be much better outdoors.
100%.
Right? Like she's someone that when the game translates to outdoors, like she'll be much tougher to beat.
Physicality, good luck.
Exactly. And just the elements and tracking down those balls. She hit such a clean ball too. You just feel like these other players are teeing off on it indoors.
Her forehand is so circular. It's just so delightful to watch.
Yeah, it is. But look, she takes a loss at 3, which is tough, but I don't think she loses that match outdoors.
And Sydney Ratliff played so well, the freshman for Ohio State. We'll get to that side of the equation in a second, but yes, I agree with you.
So I think it's like, okay, doubles, Fukuda, Czar, they're playing well. They can get taken out on a good day, but you look at some of the veterans. Pachkaleva, she's not a veteran, right? But she played lights out last season. Right. But she lost 1 match all year. Vicky Flores has more experience than just about anyone else in college tennis. And to have Janice Chen at 5 and to be losing that match,
or 4 against Coley Allen. It's just like,
right.
Yeah. It's just like, I agree. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. They flipped her. She was at 5 against Michigan, 4 against, she did pull out the win against Michigan, but to lose to Coley Allen, that is not a good loss for Janice Chen, right? This is now a Janice Chen who won't make the NCAA singles tournament after making the NCAA semifinals last year. And, Brodus at 6, she's got the game, right? Yeah. I feel like she's going to be fine. She brings the firepower. She brings the vocality as well. It's just a team where it's just the answer. The puzzle pieces are there. The puzzle has just not been created.
100%. I think you look for this Pepperdine team, a couple of things. Janice Chen does scrape out the 3-set win at 5 to clinch against Michigan over Julia Fligner. That's a big moment for Chen at 5. And Vicky Flores ultimately got the win at 5. And that's a spot they should never lose. Brodus won 0-0. Right? Yeah, exactly. Vicky Flores ended up winning against Ohio State at 5.
But not against Michigan.
Yeah, not against Michigan. But I'm saying they were undefeated on the weekend at 5. So big picture, you should be winning that. Brodus wins 0-0. She then loses a 3-set match to Luna Dorme, who lost once last year. That's not a bad loss for a freshman on the road. 3rd set, 6-4 in the 3rd. That's just not a bad loss. I agree. I'm not too disappointed with Brodus. It's 3-4-5. Pachkaleva, Flores, and Chen should go 2-1 every time. And with how well they're playing doubles and how well Fukuda and Czar have played up top, you're up 2-1 through those 3 points. And you're losing matches at 3 through 6 with the talent that they have, it just doesn't make sense. And now on the flip side, you do have to give all of the credit in the world to Ohio State, who dropped a brutal doubles point. Boulay and Allen had fought all the way back, and for them to drop that breaker to Brodus and Chen, you could have seen that pop in the balloon and just deflating this Ohio State team, particularly after they dropped doubles points to Duke, to NC State on the road. They've had that script happen a couple of times. Florida, Auburn, they've lost a lot of doubles points. But you see that callousing, and you see that callousing helping this team. They run out and rip off 5 first sets in singles. And let me be clear. Yeah, you're concerned if you're Pepperdine because of the trend, but Ohio State thoroughly outplayed them at just about every single spot in the lineup. Kantos is every bit the number 6 player in the country her ranking would indicate at number 1. And Isabelle Boulet's jump at this number 2 singles spot to be a top 35 player in the country, to have the weapon she has. Yeah, we're indoors right now, which you feel like will always be her best, but she has played her best. Coley Allen, up a set, 3-2, deuce point, ace T in the second set. Like, to take a 4-2 lead, just massage that break lead all second set long, came up with the big serves, came up with the track down of the extra ball whenever she needed it. It's what you expect out of a fifth-year senior. She has been better at the Vicky Flores role than Vicky Flores has been this season for Pepperdine comparatively. And then again, you already know Marzal and Dormé lost 3 combined matches. I don't care what the level of competition was. They lost 3 combined matches at 5 and 6 last year. If Sydney Ratliff's going to be this good at 3 as a freshman, and oh my God, was she aggressive. She took it to Lisa Czar. That was the best match on the board. And Sydney Ratliff just was the more aggressive of the 2 players. Yeah. Ohio State is top 10 good. Ohio State has built off of last season's success and taken another step forward this season. And yes, we had to talk about the Pepperdine aspect of things first. And by the way, shout out to my Wolverines, who I know we're just kind of thrown aside here, but they're good. Like, we are good. We are in the mix for a top 16 seed, undeniably. God willing, if we can beat Ohio State, their win over Pepperdine, our win over Cal, everyone's in the ball game now. And they've got wins over Florida as well and Auburn. Point being, Ohio State, the computer polls love them because they've only played good teams. But they are that good. Like, they are going to be top 5, and they should be.
Yeah, I mean,
someone on this podcast mocked my Ohio State.
No, I just didn't know if they were deserving of the top 5 ranking, but they're, I have moved them up accordingly. Look, this is the Ohio State that we were expecting to see when we started the season, right? When you just talk about the experience up and down.
I'm going to disagree. They're better. I'm sorry. I'm coming in hot. We pre-recorded our men's show right before, and sometimes it's 3 voices versus 2. Now we can really get into it. I've got that energy built up. This team, like, Ratliff's better than I thought she would be. Allen's better than I thought she would be. But most importantly, Isabelle freaking Boulet is not just an option at number 2 singles. She's one of the 5 best number 2 singles through the course of this season, which, like, you just did not expect to say.
I can't disagree with that. Yeah, they have been better than we expected, right? I mean, certainly we did not expect them to beat Pepperdine. Ever, right, this season. So yes, they have been better than expected. I'll just throw in the caveat of indoors, but the reality is they're going to play the majority of this season indoors. This is going to be a top 5, top 6 team come end of season. So this is a team that, and again, they've already stocked up these wins that are going to just appreciate over time. So this team has looked really good. There's not much more to say. I mean, up and down the lineup, you feel good about every position.
Well, here's what I would say. You go back to the 2020 indoors in Chicago, where this team had Fukuda and Wolf, but it was the formation of the nucleus with Dormé and Marzal and Cantos and Allen and Boulet all around. That group, I think, went 1-2 over the weekend, maybe 2-1, but they looked pretty solid. I remember a battle with Texas. They play Michigan that weekend. It's all blending together at this point. Come on, Alex, you're off your game. Last year, Oklahoma State, they did go 1-2, and it was a disaster of a match against Northwestern that they ended up dropping 4-3 on that final day. And then, they play a really good Big Ten season, win the Big Ten tournament, get win over Northwestern, split with Michigan as well, play Texas really close in the round of 16 before getting knocked off. You look for them this year. Really close against Duke, 4-3 loss. Really close against NC State, 4-3 loss. They got blitzed by North Carolina. But now this group, win over Florida, win over Auburn, but a signature confidence-building win now against last year's NCAA finalist in Pepperdine. This team can now look in the mirror and say, we can beat anyone. And yeah, you're right. It was indoors, but you cannot overstate the value the value of that sort of victory from a confidence-boosting perspective. What a win for the Buckeyes. Again, I think a really good weekend for the Big Ten up top. Michigan playing Pepperdine as well as they did. Ohio State ultimately earning that victory. Those were your 2 most notable road trips, though. Again, Texas 1-1, lost to Stanford, win over Cal. Pepperdine, win over Michigan, loss to Ohio State. Let's move on, though, now to another big result we had on the weekend, the Blue Gray Classic, always a fun 8-team event over in Mobile, Alabama. And, another team we had circled as not quite preseason top 10, but in the mix, certainly one of those sleeper teams. You know, Oklahoma was the obvious one. Cal was the obvious one ever. They had Wiersholm, but Oklahoma State's got some pieces. And you look for them this weekend, 4-0 over Yale, a really good 4-0 win over Furman, then 4-2 over Wake Forest to earn the Blue-Gray Classic title. They're flying in the private jet out of the Blue-Gray as well back home, which is just freaking awesome. Oklahoma State, are they the second best? Second best. I mean, that race for the third best team, right, in the Big 12, because certainly Oklahoma, Texas have earned the right to the top two. Is Oklahoma State 3, like pretty definitively now over Baylor? And, you know, how close is that gap between Oklahoma State, Texas, and Oklahoma? These Cowgirls can play.
Yeah, well, the rankings would tell you that the gap is not that far at all, right?
Exactly.
This was a top 10 team last week, and they're going to move up a few spots this week. So this is a really good Oklahoma State team. We got to see Alana Wolfberg back in action. This is another team that didn't have one of their top players from last year. She played in both doubles and singles occasionally at the Blue-Gray. This team is super talented. They have some really talented freshmen. Based on what I saw from Texas, I mean, where's the match this year, right? Who has home court advantage? Like, it's going to be close. This is a team that you look 1 through 6, really solid throughout the positions. No, you know, I know we're getting rid of this word from our vocabulary, lock, right? But super competitive at every single position. And I thought looked really strong in doubles as well. Yeah. So, I mean, the Big 12 is going to have 3 top 10 teams going into the Big 12 regular season, and they keep getting wins over each other. I mean, you talk about that race for 8 this season. Big 12 is in there for a conversation around having 2, maybe even 3 teams, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you look for this team 33-8 overall in singles. They're getting the job done everywhere. They're 9-1 overall. They're 1 loss in Columbus to Ohio State, where they were down, no Lisa Marie Rio, no Wolfberg, as you mentioned as well. It's just, this team has options. They're young as well. And, Maya Swanka has looked excellent at the top of the lineup, freshman acclimating herself so well. And
now getting to play 2, which I think is a big advantage.
Exactly. And Rojas at 6 has been excellent as well. They're good everywhere. And no match they're going to roll over, when healthy. And they've got that depth. And I'm fascinated to see them play Texas and fascinated to see them play Oklahoma as well. And again, Furman's freaking good.
Yeah.
And to beat them 4-0 and, to get the 4-2 victory over Wake Forest as well, you're just beating all the teams you need to beat to solidify a spot as a top 16 seed. It's been a pretty strong strength of schedule thus far. Wins over USC, Furman, Wake, Princeton, LSU, whatever. But, again, I've been thoroughly impressed with this Oklahoma State team. Now you look at some of the other blue-gray results, and certainly if you're Wake Forest, you took care of business. 4-0 over Troy, 4-2 over a good Texas Tech, top 25 Texas Tech team. Wake Forest has kept itself alive, particularly in a loaded ACC, to get a top 16 seed. Furman, 4-3 over Alabama, the big 4-2 bounce back win over Texas Tech. That's a critical non-conference victory for a non-Power 5 school as they try to make some sort of push. Now, top 16 is a little tougher for Furman, but certainly they'll be around that top 25 conversation. Yale avoids going 0-3. Alabama gets the win over Yale, and Arizona, nice wins over Troy and Alabama, I suppose, as well. Give me your other blue-gray takeaways. Texas Tech, you disappointed? It was a really tough draw. There are some really good teams on the women's side.
Yeah, I wouldn't say disappointed in Texas Tech. I would say impressed with Furman, right? Yes. I mean, we've been impressed with Furman, but they've been losing, right? Mm-hmm. We've been playing teams really close. And so to get these 2 wins, that vaults them into the top 25, which is really critical for them to get those non-conference matches over Power 5 schools. So, ultimately, I think your 3 winners are definitely Oklahoma State, Furman, and Wake Forest, all who kind of accomplish what they're looking to accomplish at the Blue-Gray, which is get those non-conference matches, get some ranking points, moving into conference play. And I think you have to feel good about all of those teams kind of being in the hunt here towards the end, the top 16, particularly Wake, who's just going to get a lot of shots against top ACC teams. And if they can snag 1 or 2 upsets, they're going to be putting themselves pretty primely in top 16.
Absolutely. I come out of this, who still has a shot at top 16? I think the answer is Oklahoma State, and I think the answer is Wake. And, again, if Texas Tech has a good Big 12 season, if they can steal one of first Texas and Oklahoma, maybe in Lubbock, obviously we know things get funky there, and, beat an Oklahoma State or beat a Baylor, then they are in the mix. But no, again, these are a couple of, Furman, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Wake Forest, all top 25 quality teams. Bama, Arizona, Troy and Yale ain't too shabby either. This blue-gray event's really fun. 3 matches in 2 days. They play around with it. Hopefully we'll be able to cover it here in the future at Cracked Racquets. But again, shout out to the Cowgirls. Oklahoma State 3-0 on the weekend. And yeah, they're going to be top 16, I believe, when the next edition of the computer rankings come up. With
top 8.
Top 8, excuse me. Yeah, that's pretty good, according to my calculations. With that said, let's talk about something funky going on out west. UCLA has announced to the world, hey, we're here. We're back. We've decided to start our season. And you look for the Bruins. Big week for them. They get the victory over Cal, get the victory over SC as well. You look for the Trojans. I mean, you are scratching your head, certainly, if you're Coach Swain. After what was arguably the best fall in program history, this team is now 6-6. And you look at, they've lost, I think it is 6 out of their last 7 matches. And it's just, again, over these last time, 4-1 at Oklahoma State, 4-1 at UCLA, 4-3 at home against UC Santa Barbara on Saturday. Let's start glass half full, though. UCLA's back? Like, where are we at with the Bruins after a big weekend for Coach Sampras Weber and the team?
Yeah, I mean, inexplicably so. I mean, it's like all the same players. It's just like we turned on the light switch and forgot the season had started. But yeah, I mean, UCLA is back, right? They get that dominant win over Cal. They get the win over USC. They're back into the top 16-ish range. Which is good for them, probably not where they wanted to be. And I do think this is a team that's going to continue to get better, right? You just look at they're starting 3 freshmen. So you have to assume that they'll continue to get better throughout the season, assuming both Forbes and Bolton stay healthy throughout the season. I know that's been a concern, particularly for Bolton. Look, this is a team that can upset anyone on any given day. They've looked really strong in doubles as well. So, I mean, they're back. They're playing well. I think the hard part now for the Pac-12 is there's just not a lot of points to go around, right? I mean, Cal is going to be up there boosted by their Pepperdine win. Stanford's clawing to get back into the top 25. And then you have UCLA and USC down at around 16. So there's no opportunity for top 10 points, which makes all of these Pac-12 teams pretty dangerous moving forward.
Yeah, I think the big thing if you're UCLA is that Bolton and Forbes are starting to finally look like the players we know they're capable of being at the top of the lineup. And you look for Abby Forbes, 1-1 win over Haley Giavara. And then, you look for Forbes, 6-4, 7-5 win over Erin Cayetano. You look for Bolton, she's up 6-3, 6-all on Selma Ewing. She gets a 3-2 win over El Sola. That was always going to be the foundation for this team's success. But guess what? Over the past week, it was the foundation for this team's success. On the flip side, if you're the USC Trojans, where do you go from here? Like, they're not their healthiest, obviously, and they're still trying to acclimate Piper Mora, the freshman. They're still down Naomi Chung, who is going to be a massive contributor to this team when healthy. But they're 6-6, Jay. They're 6-6, and they've lost 6 of 7.
Right, and that's the thing, right? They started the season 5-0. And then now they're 6-6. And that 5-0 stretch, right, was an on the road kickoff weekend, getting wins over Baylor and Miami, a Miami team in particular who has continued to play really well. Baylor has had some struggles. So it's perplexing. I think at least those 5 matches that they lost, right, that you were kind of talking through, you lose to teams at indoors, you lose to Oklahoma State, you lose to Oklahoma. Those are all good teams. I think the manner in which they were losing was pretty surprising, but then to lose to UCSB, 3rd time in program history, losing to UCSB. I mean, that is a very bad loss for the USC program. I don't know what the glass half full is, I mean, Cayetano finally got a win at 1. Yeah. That was much needed. That was after clinch. They just do not have the answers right now at 4, 5, and 6. And if they're going to have off days from Cayetano and Ewing at the top of the lineup, this team is not going to beat a UCSB caliber team. And they showed that this weekend.
No, it's tough. Absolutely. And you look for the Trojans again, the way they lost that match, dropping doubles, dropping 4, 5, and 6. It's an eerie start. Absolutely. It's an eerie sign of just how dependent they are on Cayetano and Ewing at the top. And just, again, figuring out those options when, Wilson at 6 on paper, you really like, but figuring out Hahn, Mora, Piper, just getting them playing their best in the middle of that lineup. And, again, working Chong back to health and just finding something to build off of, finding some confidence here for the Trojans. That's going to be so critical because, again, Stanford's still really young. UCLA has really struggled. You could argue the winner of the fall. I mean, Stanford's the number 1 team going into it, but has Washington had a better first 2 months than USC or UCLA? Probably. And so it's a fascinating Pac-12 year. And that's something obviously we'll continue to keep our eye on as well. But no, certainly, again, one half of LA, if you're a UCLA fan, you're feeling good, you're rising after this weekend. If you're USC, you're scratching your head about where your team is at heading into March. With that said, let's get to the best of the rest. Let's get to the additional results we have on hand. We start with the best of the rest. UNC, UVA, Duke. Obviously you'd throw NC State in that mix as the class of the ACC this year, but you look for what UNC was able to accomplish over the weekend. Good victories for them. 6-1 over a Notre Dame team that I think is sneaky good, Jay. I'm not really sure what to think of this Notre Dame team, but again, for Carolina, they get good wins. Duke gets a good win on the weekend as well. And just Duke gets a win over Notre Dame 5-2, as Notre Dame makes that North Carolina stretch. You look, UVA continues to look pretty solid as well. They get a 6-1 win over Syracuse. And I believe in terms of the Friday matches, 6-1 win over Boston College, Duke over Louisville, North Carolina, again, over Notre Dame. Where are you at with the ACC? Well, again, what do you think of these schools this weekend?
Yeah, it was just a good start for kind of the top tier of the ACC. Obviously, NC State hasn't started their conference play yet. I think the only result probably worth mentioning there is I think you're right. Notre Dame is sneaky good. They took doubles and 4 first sets against UNC. On paper, it was a 6-1 win. UNC came back, but I pulled up my phone from that Stanford match and was pretty shocked to see that. So Notre Dame going to be competing pretty well there for kind of the middle tier of the ACC. But overall, I think, you talk about the UNC team still being young. This is their first ACC conference as a team. So good wins for the 3 of those programs and no surprises from results.
It's good to see Chloe back healthy and playing, certainly. And again, Virginia's making that North Carolina swing this weekend. They've got Duke, they've got UNC. Prove it matches for all 3 of those teams. That's going to be a really, really fun weekend of ACC action. Let's talk about UCF. Bounce back, 4-2 win over Tulsa for Central Florida. And again, for this UCF team, I believe they play Oklahoma here this weekend as well. I think they lose that match 5-2, but signs of life, certainly, right? For a team that was Sweet 16 last year and a heartbeat away from the quarterfinals.
Yeah, we've talked about UCF a few times and just the up and down nature of their season so far. I was impressed with them this weekend. They had 5 players against Oklahoma, but it was still a 5-2 match. They got wins at 2 and 3 over the Corley sisters in singles. They're still without Zaleva, who's one of their top players. So I thought that was a good loss, actually. And then to get the win over Baylor, a 4-0 team, they were able to field a 6th player. That's a good win from a ranking perspective. Baylor, a top 25 team. So, they have a lot more. It feels like everyone has scheduled UCF. Everyone likes to make the trip down to Lake Nona. So they've got a rough schedule. So it's good to see them at least, 1, being able to field the full roster moving forward, and 2, being able to give some competition to these teams.
Very well said. Let's talk about Tulsa. You look for them this weekend, knocked off, upset by Memphis, also knocked off by UCF. It was tough after a Tulsa team that got off to a really good start to the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were ranked within the top 20 coming into this weekend. So that's rough for this Tulsa team. I guess there can only be so much success in Oklahoma in one given year. But yeah,
three teams is just too many.
It's too many. Exactly. Only the big state schools. And when one's down, Tulsa can rise, but not this year.
Yeah. Who do they think they are? Texas? Come on now. All right. With all of that said, let's get to some additional results. And I want to play a new game we're introducing here. And we're probably going to do this every week because honestly, it was a really fun format I did with Matt and Chris when we recorded earlier. I think it's going to be even more fun with a guest worthy of the game in you, Jay, our West Coast correspondent. With that in mind, it's pretty simple. Good win, bad loss. This result more indicative of the team that won and, more concerning for the team that lost. Obviously, every match is going to be some degree of both, but I'm curious which way you lean. With that in mind, we will have a rapid fire clock moving forward. As soon as I give Westhoff more than 10 minutes notice, we're going to do this sort of segment, but let's get into it. Good win, bad loss. Of course, you keep an eye on, do these teams get into the NCAA tournament, top 16 seed, et cetera, with this perspective. Start with the Big Ten team. Wisconsin, 4-3 win over SMU. Good win, Wisconsin. Bad loss, SMU.
Good win, Wisconsin. I think they looked good indoors and they looked capable of beating an SMU team.
I agree. I think that Nielsen Tennis Stadium is going to get an updated women's NCAA appearance banner, and I think the Wisconsin women are going to find them. I mean, the race for 4 in the Big Ten, who's the favorite right now? After Michigan, Ohio State, Northwestern, who is the 4th favorite? Why can't it be Wisconsin? Coach McKenna, I think, has that team headed in the right direction. Tough weekend for the SMU women. 4-1 loss to Arkansas afterwards as well. Good win, bad loss as we look at the SMU side, who I believe were top 35 coming in, or 36 coming into the weekend.
Oh, losing to Arkansas?
Yeah.
That's a bad loss.
Yeah, that's tough. I agree with you. All right, Illinois, 4-2 over Cornell.
Good win.
I agree with you. Georgia Tech, 4-3 over FSU. Miami, though, 4-3 over Georgia Tech. Good win, bad loss. What does that tell you about the ACC?
Okay. I know. So Georgia Tech beat Florida State.
4-3.
Great win for Georgia Tech. Any win would have been a good win for Georgia Tech. Lose to Miami, right?
Yeah.
And then they lose. Good win for Miami. But expected.
What that tells me is, again, the separation of the pack after, Wake Forest is going to be right there with these teams. FSU still played Georgia Tech 4-3, and they have not had a good start to their season. Shows that, again, now in ACC time for these Seminoles to rock and roll. I am so fascinated to see the top 10 of the 8. Where does Notre Dame fit into the mix in the ACC? Yeah. Are they on the Miami tier? Are they going to beat Florida State? That's just going to be such a fascinating, from South Bend, Indiana to go down in a Florida swing.
That's a tough swing even for outdoor schools.
That's what I'm saying. So that's going to be really, really fun to watch. Arizona State, 4-3 over Kansas, 4-2 over San Diego. Good wins, bad losses.
Great wins. Well,
great wins.
Well, for Arizona State, great wins. And we'll just keep it on the positive there. I mean, Kansas coming off that win over Old Dominion, San Diego, sneaky good team. A solid top of the lineup. Bad
loss for San Diego only because they're not Power 5, and you need to take that one. That's a really good win for Arizona State. It just hurts for San Diego. Not a bad loss in terms of quality of play, but bad loss in terms of for the schedule.
Exactly.
Moving forward. Yep. I agree with you. Columbia, 4-2 over Washington State. Iowa State, 4-0 over Washington State. The reason I have these in, Washington State was 65 in the rankings coming into the week. I was like, really? I had no idea. Washington State women, shout out to you. But I mean, again, Iowa State 4-0 win. Welcome to the ball game, Iowa State.
Yeah, we've been waiting for Iowa State, right? And they're moving up the rankings. They just need wins, right?
And they got a 4-1 win over Columbia as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think that those are both good wins. Washington State has strength at the top of the lineup, so they're dangerous, to get a point or two against any of these teams. Good win for the Iowa State program.
Denver 4-3 over Iowa. Colorado 4-1 over Iowa. I feel you, Sasha and Daniel. It's just another tough weekend. It's just been tough break after tough break.
I know that no longer in the NCAA conversation, which we know was a heartbreak last season.
They just have to run the gauntlet in the Big Ten, and they need to beat one of the top 3. They need to go 8 or whatever the number is and beat all the schools. Last one, Utah 4-0 over BYU. Utah?
Right. Yeah. Right. I think both their men and women are going to be ranked in like the top 30.
40. Yeah,
top 40.
Utah?
Right. Utah. Good win. Let's not forget, this is a BYU team that beat Baylor to start the season. So good win for them. Maybe Utah's the team in the Pac-12 who at least emerges and gives some of these other programs a run for their money.
I think I'm just going to keep saying it. Utah? Again, the Utes on the rise. No, it was a really fun week of college tennis. Did I miss anything? I think we got all the results.
Yeah.
And so with that said, only a couple things left for us to do. Let's get to our rankings here this week. And again, we've settled in to our normal show routine here. We're going to run through all the results, talk about the rankings, now get to the week ahead, but let's do our top 10 rankings first. And again, we're recording this on Monday. That's before the newest edition of the rankings come out. Fairly stable at the top. Obviously, the big riser, Ohio State, who was either outside or at number 10, moves up to number 4 here in our rankings. Same top 3 as before. Virginia, Ohio State were tied for 5. Super producer Daniel Westoff getting to see the Buckeyes this weekend on our Cracked Racquets stream. He breaks the tie. Ohio State 4, Virginia 5. Got the right Pepperdine call, 6. Yeah, I agree. Virginia 6. Stanford 7. Well, I don't know if I agree. Well, whatever my ranking said, maybe I didn't agree. Virginia, Pepperdine 6, Stanford 7, Texas 8, A&M 9, Georgia there at 10. It's the best 3-2 team you'll ever see. Who are we missing on this list? Duke has the chance to prove it this weekend with a win over Virginia. And I actually don't think either team would fall out of the rankings, even no matter who. I'm still probably going to have both in my top 10, assuming it's a close match. A&M, they're just like, can we start the SEC, please? They're like, we want people to remember how good. Like, A&M is the sleeping giant, in my opinion. They're at 9, where they are. We know they're good, but they might be top tier good. Like, they might be right there on the level with the Ohio States, Virginias of the world. We just really haven't seen them flex their muscles since the national indoors. I know that was only 2 weeks ago. And I still have in my head, if they win that Cal match, how different is the national indoors? Like, do they beat Pepperdine the next day? I honestly think they do. Where are you at with the top 10? I apologize.
Yeah. Well, they didn't beat Cal, right? And so
they would argue, they might have, but go on. Yeah.
And their best win has been USC. Right. Sure. Which continues to depreciate. So they haven't both. You look at Texas A&M and Georgia are actually just in our top 10 because of like appreciation for the program and the talent they have on paper, not necessarily their results thus far. And
they've done nothing to drop out of the top 10 is the real truth.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. I don't think we mentioned like Stanford now making the appearance in the top 10.
They replaced Cal.
They replaced Cal. Exactly. Only room for one Bay Area team. I get it. 100%. Overall, I think this looks right. I think, Pepperdine is just the question mark, right? So yeah, I think this looks solid. Not much movement other than the ones we talked about. The other teams that are, one we don't have is Oklahoma State, right? Oklahoma State is in the top 10 rankings. We don't have them there. So that's a notable absence for us.
Yeah, them and Duke would be right on the outskirts. Cal as well, yep. Michigan as well, all in the mix for those top 10 spots. Just ultimately Georgia gets that final boost. But again, thin margins. Everyone's really good. And now we get to see this weekend with some conference play coming up. Who's going to separate themselves? Who are the teams to beat here as we look towards the week ahead? And, again, Jay, I know you know this, but for our listeners who don't, we're going to have a bunch of these matches on our Cracked Racquets broadcast. Obviously, we're covering the SEC every Friday. It's going to be a red zone broadcast that you can find on all of the team websites, hopefully by this Friday. So again, that red zone broadcast available on each team website. Then, of course, every Sunday, we're going to have our Big Ten Red Zone broadcast, and that's going to be on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. So Friday's SEC, Sunday's Big Ten. You look at the matches this week, we have some good matches across conferences, and we'll start, again, as you look towards the week. I suppose that Wednesday Baylor at Rice is the early chaser, but the action really gets going on Friday. You've got, Florida State at NC State, Virginia at Duke, and honestly, a USC at Utah match that all of a sudden has become fascinating. Miami at Wake Forest, Kentucky at Alabama, Ole Miss at Georgia, Washington at Arizona State. I mean, again, up and down the board, really good stuff on Friday. You look towards Saturday, Michigan's at UCF, and again, good match. I mean, obviously that's one I'm going to be looking towards. San Diego at Pepperdine. I think that's a really fun test for the Waves. And then we get back into it Sunday. Virginia at UNC, Miami at NC State, Texas at UCF, Florida at Texas A&M, Kentucky at Auburn. I mean, FSU at Wake Forest is like the undercard. Ole Miss at Tennessee, Vanderbilt at Alabama, Northwestern at Kansas. There's even a UCLA at Utah match that I'm all in on. It's a fun weekend, Jay. I know I mentioned a lot of matches there. What are you watching most closely?
Yeah, and for the list of all those matches, college tennis ranks, week ahead.
Yeah, of course. That's the place to go.
You can go and get those. I mean,
scoring and video links as well.
Amazing. For me, first and foremost, it's the Virginia travels to the Tobacco Road, right? Taking on UNC and Duke. That has a lot of implications on rankings and who will ultimately emerge victorious from the ACC. So watching that one closely, super fun. Both the men and the women for Virginia are in North Carolina. So, for me, that makes it easy to watch. So looking forward to those matches. I'm also fascinated to see Georgia opening up their SEC play. You call them the best 3-2 team in the country, which they definitely are, but they need to start getting wins, right? They're going to be, plummeting in the rankings pretty soon here without these wins. So fascinated to see them play. NC State kicking off their ACC campaign. We talked about kind of Duke, UNC, UVA kicking off against like Louisville and Notre Dame, and NC State, they've got Florida State, Miami off the bat. So that's going to be a good test for the NC State team, who we haven't seen play since they took out Texas in Austin. And then I think last two things for me are, can Stanford back up its win over Texas, right? They're playing Pepperdine in Malibu. Should be a really fascinating match. Again, this is a Stanford team that needs as many wins as they can if we as fans want to avoid having them as like ranked 18 going into the NCAA tournament. And then
it's weirder when they're a top 10 seed now. I'm used to them at like a solid 12.
Right, exactly. And they'll draw Florida or UNC in the first round. And then lastly, I mean, with SEC play, you talk about A&M, you talk about Auburn. Are we about to see kind of this proliferation of rankings points throughout the SEC, right? Either A&M and Auburn are going to get two really solid wins this weekend, or if one of them stumbles, we're going to start to see the rise of the mid-tier of the SEC in the rankings, whether that be South Carolina, Florida, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. So really fascinating to see how all those SEC matches shake up.
Should we do 3 minutes on Oklahoma just because we haven't done a show this year without doing 3 minutes on Oklahoma? I'm like a little concerned. I'm like, is there a quarterly take we haven't given yet? Do we have another Guzman update?
I have a Guzman update for you.
Oh, let's go. Give me the update.
So teams have been posting these mic'd up segments on Twitter, which are very fun, by the way. Florida posted one. Oklahoma posted one today. And there is an action shot of Dana Guzman in that video hitting ground strokes, no tape, nothing on her. It's a good sign if you're a Sooner fan.
It's a good sign indeed. And no Alana Smith update, but of course, we're keeping our eye on that, as well as, again, there are a lot of, I think the teams on the women's side are just playing better to start the year than the ones on the men's are, but you still feel like there's a lot of room for all of these teams to continue to get better as well. And that's what's going to make it such a fun 2022 college tennis season. And of course, we'll be here to cover it all every week on The Deciding Point. Now, again, we apologize for not being live this week. We'll be back at our normal time slot live 9 p.m. We will be live 9 p.m. Eastern time. Let's try that again on Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday each and every week to recap the Division I women's college tennis world. Of course, you can read more about the best matches of the week on the No Ad, No Problem blog, written each and every week by my friend John Parsons. Jay, how are we doing with our predictions? Are we still undefeated as a collective?
Well, so this past weekend I wrote about Texas Stanford and I got that one wrong. I shouldn't have bet against Stanford on that one. And then the one I was excited about, Harvard Northwestern on the men's side, canceled. So I did. It's fitting though that the Stanford one's my first miss on the prediction side.
Typical Presley Thieneman, just setting you up for failure. No, yeah, it's
that one's a scratch.
Yeah, no, again, you can read them every week. They're always a pleasure and always a delight to enjoy. And then again, here we're covering college tennis action each and every weekend. Fridays are SEC Red Zone broadcast. Sundays are our Big Ten Red Zone broadcast. That Sunday broadcast available on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. Friday on each of the SEC team pages. With all of that said, one more shout out to our friends at SwingVision. Best in the business, folks. It is artificial intelligence for your tennis. You can learn more about them by clicking on the link in the podcast description. Use our promo code CRACK20. When you inevitably sign up, you'll get a $20 discount and a 14-day pro trial. Thank you to our friends at SwingVision for the support. Learn more by clicking on that link in the description. With all that said, another exciting week of college tennis in the books. And as always, I appreciate you joining me, my friend, to break it all down. Any final thoughts?
I think that's it. This was our first full, normal show, right? So this is a good cadence. I'm excited to keep this up moving forward.
Yeah, this is the groove now.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So with that said, for my fantastic co-host, John J. Parsons, our super producer, Daniel Westhoff, who, as always, has the toughest of jobs to do, our friends at SwingVision, from all of us here at both Crack Racquets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I am your host, Alex Gruskin. You know what we say. Jay, what do we say? I forgot to set you up. My bad.
Hey, great shot.
And we will see you all next week. Thanks, everyone.